Hello, and welcome to Vampire Pitches, where we pitch hypothetical vampire movies and streaming shows that will never get made. So today I have gathered together a group of pitchers. It's going to be a trio of us this time, and I would love to introduce you to them now. So in no particular order, but how you're arranged in my Zoom window, Samantha, let's start with you.
Hello, my name is Sam. I go by my middle name on the internet, Rain, but people tend to ignore that and just call me by the silly nickname Digi instead. um, and I'm trying to do YouTube.
All right, excellent. And Tim?
Yes, like Sean said, my name's Tim, Tim Cunningham, to be my full name. I am a visual effects producer, and used to want to write and direct and make movies, maybe someday again, but I do visual effects.
And just because, I mean, people might be curious, any projects you've worked on that people might have heard of?
Yeah, a few. I guess my most recent project, I just finished producing visual effects for a show on Amazon called Carnival Row, about fairies living amongst us.
Fabulous show.
Alternate world. And right now I'm working at a little studio called Marvel. I can't really say what I'm working on, but it's going to be cool.
How exciting!
That's excellent. Okay, so those are our pitchers for today, and this particular time, our pitch subject is a modern-day descendant of Van Helsing. So, each of these pitches will take place present day and have a descendant of Abraham Van Helsing in it somewhere, and those were the only requirements. So these may all be wildly different, and after each one, the people who did not pitch will ask a couple questions as though we're studio executives. So let's go ahead and hear what we've got this time. Timmy, you want to go first?
No. But
okay. Samantha, you want to go first?
I'll go.
Okay, excellent.
I'll go. Yeah, I hate pitching, but it's good to practice these sorts of things. So, and full disclosure, I just came up with this story. So, never started a pitch that way though.
You're like, I've worked on this for years. It's completely polished. You're not ready for it.
So I guess I'd say, so it's a bit of a, think Lost Boys meets Superbad meets Fright Night. And the main character in this story is he's a sixth grader named Ben. And he's a big vampire fan, or genre fan. He loves movies and pop culture and, monster movies and things. He's his dad's recently passed away, so he's been distracted by that, sort of dealing with that. And his best friend is a girl named Lucy, who is enamored, is in love with him. He doesn't realize it though. Mm-hmm. Because he's in love with somebody who's completely out of his league and also not worth his time. It's, that typical little middle school story. And he's got a brother named Pete, who's a bit of a deadbeat.
Deadbeat Pete.
Deadbeat Pete. And ever since his dad died, Ben's been, he's sort of become unhealthy, obsessed, has an unhealthy obsession with his brother and what his brother's up to, and he's convinced that his brother is no good. He sleeps all day. He goes out at night. He's considerably older, but so he's convinced that he's up to no good. So he's sort of channeling his anger about his dad passing onto his brother. Subconsciously thinking that his brother is somehow to blame. So he convinces Lucy to. He's been watching him, and he's got a file on him. He's like, something's up with him. And so he follows him, or he convinces Lucy to come with him to follow him out one night. and follows him to a club or a party or something like that. And they sneak in and they witness a lot of things that they shouldn't at their age. One of the things is that they realize, well, maybe his brother, his brother's definitely a drug dealer. So they see these things, but while they're there, they get caught by some other people at the party they're like, hey, what are y'all doing here? Y'all shouldn't be here. And they're like, well, we're friends of Pete's, or that's my brother. And he's like, oh my God. So they drag him over and say, hey, Pete, they say they know you. And he's like, oh my God, what are you doing here? And something happens in that moment. They're scared. They don't know what's happening. And one of the people that's sort of threatening them reveals in some way they might be not exactly human. It's a look in the eye, or they show their teeth or something, and they run them out of there. But because they know Pete talks them out of it, and he's like, nah, they're good. It's fine. Don't worry about it. And they let him go. But only Ben sees this. Lucy doesn't. She's much more rational about things. She's the smartest one in the whole movie. And so he's like, no, I saw something. I think I saw a vampire. There's a vampire there. There's vampires. And maybe Pete's a vampire. I don't know. And she's like, you have been watching too many movies, too much television, too much comic books. You need to stop. But she loves him secretly. And so she'll do whatever he needs her to do to support him. And he convinces her to go. He's also been hunting, he's a big fan of this guy who runs a YouTube channel, and it's all about monster hunting. It's not a big popular YouTube channel. He's got over 1,000 subscribers. So Ben thinks he's a big deal. And he goes, and the show's called Dan Van Helsing. And he claims to be a descendant of Abraham Van Helsing. So he talks, he's been a fan of this guy's, he's like seen him at, little conventions or little things. And he knows where he is. He lives nearby. And so he talks Lucy into going with him to try and get this guy to help. He's like, he's a Van Helsing. He's, he's going to help. And then when they show up, they realize, or, Ben's completely enamored with him. And Lucy's like, I don't think this guy is who you think he is. So Dan, I've been watching a lot of Vice Principals. So the cast, Dan is played by Danny McBride. So right there, that should tell you the tone of this film. It is irreverent, and he is Danny McBride. So they show up, and Lucy's like, I don't think this guy is who you think he is. Ben is totally enamored. They tell him, he pitches the whole idea, like, I think my brother might be a vampire, that I need your help. You're you're Van Helsing. You need help. And he's like, no, I'm not. Well, I usually get a fee for this sort of thing, right? And so he sees it as an opportunity, and Ben was ready for that. He's like, I'll pay $500. So he's like, oh, okay. So yeah, sure. So he talks him into, come over to my house. I'll invite you over for dinner, and you can out him, or you can do your test and figure it out. And so Dan's does that. He talks him into it. He shows up. Ben's mom is actually quite attractive, so he's sort of enamored by him and sort of distracted by that. But he can sort of tell he's got this. He sort of ad hocs this and tries to trap Pete into these traps to determine if he's a vampire. It goes hilariously awry. Mom kicks him out. He's embarrassed. He's like, but Ben runs after him and convinces him one last time. No, you have to help. You have to go to the club and so he talks him into. He's like, look, he's like, well, I need another fee. He's like, well, I already gave you all my money. And he's like, well, I don't know, I'm gonna have to help you. So he says, well, I'll get you a date with my mom. And he's like, okay, cool. So he's like, but I got the date first before I do the thing. And he's like, sure. So he has to talk his mom into going out on this date. It goes horrible. But he does learn a little bit about Ben. His dad just died. And you learn that Dan has some dad issues as well. And he's been estranged from his father. So he's like, all right. So he starts to kind of feel for the kid. He does show up. He shows up at the club, but he shows up in his Dan Van Helsing garb from his YouTube. And, he rolls up in his van. He's got the kids with him. He's like, look, I'm going to go take care of this. You're going to have any problems with these vampires anymore. I'll figure it out. But y'all stay in the van. So he marches into the club or wherever it is. But the minute he's out of sight, he's like, screw these kids. He just goes in, he goes to the bar, and he's just ordering a drink. And he's just sort of, this guy in this trench coat, with a hat and the whole thing. And so a girl comes up to him. It's like, what, who are you? And what do you do? And he's like, I'm not. And just, he sort of lets slip, these kids, he's like, you don't know anything about vampires around here in these parts or whatever. And she's like, I don't know. What are you talking about? But she's like, starts to come on to him. She convinces him to go back into the back. He's like, oh, cool. This is a cool club. She then reveals herself as a vampire, and he starts to freak out. This hilarious sort of fight breaks out. He does have stakes on him, and sort of they spill out. Others sort of join, and there's this big scene where he ends up staking this vampire in the middle of the club. And then they reveal there's a vampire master. His name's Malcolm, played by what's his name? In my head, I see the other vice principal, Coggins.
Walton Goggins.
Walton Goggins from Justified. He's very slick and charismatic, and he
team these two guys back up again.
Yeah, he witnesses this killing, and then Dan has no choice. He's now surrounded. He's like, he has to be this performative, thing, and he's like threatening them. It's like, but he talks his way out of it. They think, well, wait, Van Helsing, like what is this? And so he gets out of there, but he's totally freaked out. He's covered in blood. They're like, what happened? Runs across the street. He's like, it's all good. You're right. They're vampires. And so he drops him off. He's like, okay, you should be good. I took care of it. They won't be bothering you. And don't ever call me again. And he just leaves them. But then the brother comes home because he was there. He saw it. He's like, dude, what did you do? Like, and they're like, well, what are you hanging out with vampires? And he's like, well, are you a vampire? No, I'm not a vampire. I'm a familiar to them. And now we're all in danger. And so he's like, but I've been trying to get out. And, like, I know about them. I know, and we have to take them out now because they're going to come for us because their cover's blown. And, and you brought in a Van Helsing? What's the matter with you? So they go, well, we got to go get him. So they go back. They are all, the brother takes him over there. They try and convince the Van Helsing, Dan, and he's like, nope, I'm done. He's like packing up when they show up, and they're like, so Ben's pleading with them, and he pleads the case of his father, which kind of almost gets to Dan. And then Lucy steps in. She's like, no, he's not. He's like, I would love to help you, Ben, but I'm not who you think I am. I'm not what you think I am. And Lucy says, yeah, you're a fraud. You're not even a Van Helsing. And he goes, no, I'm a Van Helsing, but I'm not a monster hunter. And I'm a coward, is what I am. And they're like, yeah, he's not going to help us. He's like, well, I said, I'm not a monster hunter, but I know somebody who is. And so they roll up in this trailer park, and you're like, what's going on? We don't know if he's the real deal or not. Knock on the door, and opens, and there is this guy, long hair, scraggled, tough as nails looking. Think Kurt Russell. This is Dan's dad, who was a monster hunter. He's a Van Helsing, but he's fallen on hard times. He's an alcoholic now and all this, and they've been separated, estranged. Dan's not a monster hunter. He wanted to be an actor. He didn't want to fight monsters because he was afraid of them, is what you learn here. And he was always sort of a disgrace to his dad and this and that. But they tell the dad, they managed to get him involved, and they're like, all right, son, let's go clean up your mess. And so they have to go to another, so then there's a big confrontation at the end with with all the two Van Helsings, the kids, and you know, they end up winning out and freeing his brother Pete, and Danny becomes the monster hunter he never really wanted to be. But their relationship is sort of repaired, and Pete and Ben's relationship is repaired, and everybody's better off in the end, if not a little more covered in blood.
All right.
That is the Dan Van Helsing.
Nice.
Dan Van Helsing.
Fantastic.
That is excellent.
That's very good.
I feel like I have a million questions. Sam, do you want to launch into the first one?
I don't have questions so much as I just love the concept of this Descendant being just some guy on YouTube. Just because I am also just some girl on YouTube. As we know, I really appreciate like this time that we're in where people can just like go online and like just kind of do whatever they want. I just think that's a really cool way to like make a vampire hunter, is to have someone who like researches it and then like makes videos about it. It's very, very, I like it a lot. I would love to see something like that for sure.
You came up with all of that this morning?
I did.
I'm impressed.
I did.
I was expecting like a 30-second like, yeah, I mean, it's like this, but then this guy happened. That's all I got.
It's all, but it feels very messy to me in my head. But yeah, my daughter, I had a piano lesson this morning, and I was like, oh yeah, we have a pitch today, and that's when I texted you. So it was actually between the time that I texted you and now.
That was like 2 hours ago.
Oh, well. But I think about vampires quite a lot. So.
My man. That's fabulous. So I've got to know, do Lucy and Ben get together?
Yes, very pressing.
Yes, Lucy and Ben will get together. You know, at least there'll be a hint of it at the end. You know, there'll be, you know, she'll reveal her love for him by, you know, basically saving his ass at the, you know, in this moment, because she's the smartest, toughest one of any of them.
Right.
And then he'll be like, oh, I get it. Yeah, I love you too. So yeah. Yes.
All right.
I mean, I pictured it being, you know, with that if I was able to get that sort of a cast, you know, it really being Superbad, you know, the irreverence of Superbad and that sort of toilet humor with heart, you know, that sort of that sort of a film or a story.
That's awesome. I was wondering, like, sort of like his sort of success story at the end. Does he, like, is there something where, like, during the huge fight, there's somebody who's videoing the whole thing?
Right,
and then that goes up on YouTube, and then suddenly he's like...
Well, I think he's going to have, like, his valet or somebody that is this idiotic sort of sidekick of his that is convinced that, you know, he's on the verge of success, and if he can just, and so that'd be part of it. He's always there, and he does get him to go every time and video the stuff, and that eventually, and then the last thing would be, like, his new episode is him and his dad actually going out and doing real monster hunting.
Oh,
yes, right. I love that.
It's a family show. That's
right.
Well,
excellent pitch, dude. Well done for a morning's worth of work. That's great.
Oh, thank you. Well, now I want to make it.
Excellent. So. I'm happy to
Absolutely.
hear that. Okay, well, Sam, do you feel like going next?
Yeah, I mean, why not?
Excellent.
All right, okay, so I have like a little introduction paragraph written here that I will start with. This is probably just going to be a one-off movie. Um, so let's see. We start with two figures, one a woman around her late 20s to early 30s, and the other a boy in his teens. They are both standing by the lakeside, armed with stakes and blades, engaged in what seems to be a training exercise of sorts. The woman, Carol, is having her younger brother repeat the motion of stabbing with a stake and slicing with the blade faster and faster until the boy, Lewis, gets fed up and tosses his weapons aside. He gripes about how he knows how but doesn't want to do this because she is just a kid and requests Carol to take care of this one on her own, since she clearly has no qualms with this concept where he does. Carol berates him, saying someday he will not have her and must continue their lineage, carrying out far worse kills than this next. Lewis, being the defiant teenager he is, remarks he doesn't want the burden of their bloodline's legacy and storms back into the house and around to his bedroom. He grips the sides of his wooden vanity in anger as he stares at his reflection, trying to picture himself doing what is being asked of him, murdering a young girl. Van Helsing or not, how could anyone mutilate a child, one he was not much older than, no less? He had begrudgingly assisted in destroying vampires before, but never. A great tiredness rolls over him, and Lewis backs up to sit at the foot of his bed. After rubbing his eyes, he suddenly feels something. A tickling at his feet, akin only to the oily, bristling fur of an animal. Not wanting to startle whatever is lurking below him, Lewis slowly raises his eyes back to the large vanity, awaiting to see some creature mirrored in its surface. But that vision does not arrive. Now, before I continue with like the plot, I kind of want to give a little context to my pitch because
By all means.
I kind of talk a little bit fast, so if you want to interject, feel free. But when I first saw the prompt, I was like, oh my god, oh no. I'm part of this Gen Z cusp. I know nothing about this. I've never read Dracula. um, so what I did was I watched the Bram Stoker's Dracula with Winona and Keanu, and I signed up for Dracula Daily, um, which is only like in the first quarter of the story right now, like chronologically speaking. So otherwise, I have mainly just been consulting like the Wikipedia for for this. So forgive me if anything is like inaccurate or out of place in my idea here. And it's a pretty sort of like weird choice, but very simple. Like so simple I kind of feel like I'm cheating. Uh, and this might have been done before. I'm praying it hasn't. It didn't seem like it when I googled it, but basically, when I was watching the Bram Stoker's Dracula film and the Count first showed up in that like heart-shaped hairdo, my brain immediately went like, "Oh, that makes me think of the Queen of Hearts." And
Interesting.
so
Interesting.
yeah, so as you are to vampires, I'm sort of like an Alice in Wonderland fanatic. Like I have decorations all over my room. I literally have like these figures, like literally right here on my desk.
Excellent.
One of my favorite video game series of all time is the American McGee's Alice series,
Yeah,
which is kind of
yeah.
like a dark spin on Alice in Wonderland. And the 1951 cartoon was like one of my favorite movies growing up, and I even enjoyed like the bad Tim Burton one, et cetera, et cetera. So of course that's what came into my mind. And I also had the thought when Van Helsing was finally introduced in the Coppola movie, where he's like smoking and all. I was like, he's kind of giving me like the vibes of like a human version of the caterpillar. Uh, and after that, it was all over. There was no going back. Even when I tried to come up with something else, I just ended up at Alice in Wonderland. So I hope you can at least appreciate I'm combining like one passion with another. If you get nothing else out of this. So yeah, this is just if Dracula was Alice in Wonderland. And at first I was like, shoot, this has to be modern though. I have no idea how to make like a script from two old literary classics modern. And then I was like, wait, just kidding. Yes, I do. Because Wonderland in the book and movie and everything is like a dream. So this version can and should also be a dream sequence, especially since that's kind of a reoccurring theme in Dracula, from what I can tell. Like having strange dreams, or like Jonathan's experiencing things that make him feel like he must be dreaming. And I also haven't read the Alice in Wonderland book since I was like really little, and I don't remember a lot of it either. So that's kind of more Wikipedia researching. But anyway, now that I've got that set up, I'm gonna quickly go through like the actual events I figured out and story, and then like who's replacing who in the plot and all that. Okay, so where we left off, Lewis, confused after he hadn't seen anything in the mirror, finds himself getting back up as he examines it closer. As he touches the glass, he tumbles through it, falling down an endless abyss amongst an array of things: letters, garlic, horse-drawn carriages, and various crosses of different sizes, to name a few. He eventually lands in a room filled with many doors and finally sees it, a white rabbit. It says to him, "You're going to be late," and runs off, concluding this must have been what was at his heels earlier, and that he's in fact fallen asleep and is having a dream about Alice in Wonderland. He, of course, follows it. Lewis then goes through a series of events, sort of twisted between both the goings-on in Wonderland and the events and happenings of Dracula. To get through one of the doors, he finds a bottle labeled "Drink Me," which looks and tastes mysteriously of blood. Subsequently, on the other side, he sees the limp body of a woman with the words "Eat Me" etched into her skin. He meets a deeply dismayed man, Jonathan Harker, playing the role here of the Dormouse, and at a time the White King, whom Lewis feels the urge to speak in German to, but bizarrely is only capable of saying words that are to do with shadows and the devil, which only upsets Jonathan further, who flees. Lewis later learns that instead of jam on the nose, Jonathan can only be calmed by the taste or smell of finely roast chicken with paprika. He meets Dr. John Seward, who is our Dodo, Quincy P. Morris, who is a cowboy with a cowboy hat, so he must be the Mad Hatter. And both Seward and Quincy take the place of Tweedledee and Tweedledum respectively as well, if not just because they are the two poor fools Lucy did not marry. And they recite the poem "The Werewolf and the Solicitor."
I love this. I love this.
Thank you. I'm glad. And Arthur Holmwood is the March Hare, and in turn the Red King. The things that they all say and the plans that they seem nonsensical, and yet Lewis feels he knows exactly what they're in a tizzy about. He meets his great-grandfather of many generations himself, Abraham Van Helsing, instead of the Caterpillar, who angrily criticizes Lewis for not understanding the gravity of his situation, pleading with him to realize how desperately he must not overlook the vampire Carol wants to kill, how long she's been around and how powerful she's grown because of it, and teaching him of his mission to kill Dracula, using the colorful smoke of his cigar to illustrate his points. He then meets Renfield, an enigma of a madman who eats vermin to gain strength. Sounds like our Cheshire Cat to me. Who directs him to join forces with Seward, Quincy, and Arthur, but disappears before Lewis can confirm why. He groups up with them at tea time despite this. They come upon the king/queen of hearts himself, Count Dracula, and Lewis learns of what happened to Lucy Westenra, the Red Queen, and Mina Murray, the White Queen, through chess. Chants of "off with her head" in reference to Lucy surround Lewis. Lewis is put on trial. I know, crazy, right?
Oh my
There's
God.
a lot of parallels. There's a lot of parallels.
Yeah, this is like I feel like a curtain is being drawn back here. Please keep going.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Lewis is put on trial as all of the Dracula cast gives testimony. Lewis finds out during their testimonials that this is not just a stress dream. In actuality, it is a dreamlike vision being forced upon him by none other than the vampire girl he has been tasked to take down. And yeah, so essentially, at the end, he tracks the White Rabbit down, and it turns out that the rabbit is really an animal form of this vampire, and her name is Lottie Pleasance, who is also playing the role of Alice in our story, and that's why he couldn't see her as a rabbit in the Vanity, of course, because she's a vampire. Um, this comes from this idea I had where I was thinking, since the Count can like turn into like a wolf and like a bat, and all this stuff, it was like, what if like this Alice character could turn into like the rabbit and like the Jabberwock? Um,
Oh,
so so there's like this final showdown between Lewis and Lottie as the Jabberwock, where Lewis is the warrior boy from the Jabberwocky poem, with his Vorpal blade, his Vorpal sword. Um, at this point, like totally ready to take her down because she's appearing as this huge dragon, in this dream state. But she's like, oh no, you don't. You're going to face me in real life, you coward. So this whole time she was giving him this vision to like taunt him. She's like double dog daring him to like just try and kill her. Like because she wants him to come and try to kill her because she totally wants to eat him. Like she totally wants to suck his blood. So she used the likeness of Abraham Van Helsing and the others and everything to try to attempt to convince him to come after her. It wasn't like this dream that Lewis had where like the spirit of Abraham told him to shape up or anything. Like maybe that's what she was kind of trying to go for at first, just decided to like reveal herself eventually. But yeah, and she's able to pull their likenesses up, all of the characters from Dracula, so vividly, because Lottie became a vampire because she is one of the children that Lucy Westenra herself had hunted in the real world when the real events of Dracula actually happened.
I love it. I love it.
And she managed to escape being killed by Lucy and was turned into like a 7-year-old vampire, and flew under the Van Helsing's radar for like all these generations, all this time. And the reason that she chose Alice in Wonderland as the vessel for this vision was because Lottie really loved the book, and all the books about it when she was growing up, since like they kind of came out like 30-ish years between each other, Dracula and Alice in Wonderland, so she could have read the Alice in Wonderland stories when she was a child. So anyway, Lewis finally wakes up in a cold sweat when she releases him from this dream, with like a newfound conviction, knowing that he has no choice but to find her and kill her. And there you go. That's where it ends. That's my pitch. I don't know what I would call it. I tried to come up with a bunch of different like Van Helsing through the looking glass type dramatic titles, but I don't know, nothing really stuck. But yeah, there we go. that's my pitch.
Oh.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a great, yeah. The parallel that I don't think it's been done.
I don't think it has
your
either.
question, no.
When I googled it, I just found
Sean
like there was
would
like
know, and he the look on his face is telling you it has not been done.
I'm glad you like it. I was kind of worried it was gonna be kind of like, I don't know, dumb or something, but I'm glad you seem to genuinely be enjoying it.
Oh my God, that was amazing. I've never heard anything like that.
Wow, thank you so much.
That is an incredible literary mashup.
Yeah,
for
yeah. And me personally, I love mashups. I love
me too.
That idea.
Yeah.
Mine's kind of that as well, where it's like
right.
I love the comedy with the horror, and
exactly.
The super raunchy with super sweet. It's sort of those types of things. Sort of,
I'm a total sucker.
Both things
like
vary
that.
all that much better. Or space cowboys.
Yes.
So I loved that sort of mashup. I guess I don't know. Do you have questions, Sean? Do you want?
Go, talk by all means.
I guess so. Are you seeing basically the third act is resolving in him waking up and realizing that this is what he needs to do and setting out on that, or does that sort of wrap up? Is that the beginning of the third act and we see the altercation or the hunt or the face off? Do we ever see that part?
Yeah, I had kind of like written it being like that's kind of where it ends, is like the conviction or whatever. But I mean, in all honesty, it would be pretty cool to see these two like children trying to murder each other, I'm sure.
At least at the very start of it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it wouldn't really fit into the Alice in Wonderland like
Sure.
thing. At least I felt. I'm sure there's a way to like, because there's so many parallels between these stories that I didn't notice until I had this idea. I'm sure I could like work something out and like make the final confrontation be, you know, thematically appropriate in some way. So I hadn't thought of it, but I do think it is possible. If people wanted to
Yeah, I
see that,
mean,
I think
I don't know that
I
it's
could do it.
necessary either way. You know,
Yeah,
in my
exactly.
to me, if it, you know, you could go either way. You know, having that reveal very strong, like, oh no, that this is a Van Helsing, and that and the fight continues.
Hmm.
You know, versus, you know, there's a part of me that would like to see at least the very like start of that. You know, if because it doesn't feel like a sequel sort of thing, but
Right,
I
exactly.
want a little. I would want a little nugget of that. No, that it's very clear that he knows his mission
Right.
and is uh is going to follow through.
Yeah, noted. I absolutely doable. I would love to do that. I just wasn't sure if it was gonna be interesting in part of the conclusion.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
I'm glad that it will be.
But yeah, so how do you see, like, I mean, do you have an idea for the I mean, I'm picturing Alice in Wonderland, but I don't think that's what you picture in your head. Like, how do you see the other side of the looking glass in this? Like,
Right.
what is the look and feel of this vision into you?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's sort of like the scenery and everything is probably very like strictly, very vividly Alice in Wonderland. Like,
Yeah.
all the illustrations from the book and everything. Like, I'm picturing basically exactly that, but I'm not really picturing the Dracula characters like being like Renfield isn't actually a cat or like anything
Right.
like that. He's just gonna be like himself, but like maybe he's wearing like a kind of weird stripy outfit that's like reminiscent of the Cheshire Cat
Gotcha.
or something.
So
Maybe it's
allusions
animated.
to
I
these
don't know.
characters. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So just some kind of references for the
Gotcha.
actual characters themselves. Yeah.
Awesome.
That is amazing. That is amazing. It just sounds like it's such a wonderful, like, colorful, lush visual experience
Yeah,
that, like,
absolutely.
it's like all safety's off. You can just get as weird as you want with that.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I in like Timmy said, like, you know, I feel like that ending can be really compelling in any direction.
Yeah.
And there's some, like, the way that you delivered it, where you're like, he wakes up and he knows, like, oh, I have to go face her for real. I'm like, oh my God, like, that's the end of the movie. Like he just, like, climbs out of bed and, like, goes over and picks up the stake and the sword or whatever it is, and, like, that's the, and, like, looks out the window and, like, it's just dark outside or something like that, and then, like, that's the end. Like, not knowing what he's actually gonna run into,
Right.
I think is terrifying. And that's and like, and you get that, you know, you get sort of the completion of his emotional journey, of his character arc,
Right.
in that moment where he realizes, like, oh no, I have to be the Van Helsing.
Right, exactly. Yeah, because that's one of the things that always bothered me, I guess, a little bit about like the resolution of Alice in Wonderland itself, like specifically in like the cartoon where like the kind of like moral of the story seems to be like, oh well, kids don't get too curious now because you know, listen to the adults, you know, don't
Yes.
life's crazier than it
Yes.
sounds or like whatever. So I feel like that theme hits a lot harder in this like vampiric context. Where it's not just like, oh, kids being silly. It's like, no, like
The stakes are
what
very
the
high.
stakes are very high,
I
literally.
see what you did there.
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, I think it lends itself to like the actual theme of what Alice in Wonderland was trying to go for, better than even the story itself. So I think I'm glad that it lands basically.
Oh
No,
my
it's
God.
great. Yeah, yeah. I want to see it.
Yeah, I
Thank
totally want to see
you.
it.
Do
That's
you
exactly
have?
what you want to hear.
Yeah. Well, and I love the idea of Alice being actually the antagonist
Yes.
in this story,
Yeah, that
which
is
I
so
don't
much. That's such a
think
fun twist.
Thank
don't
you.
think I don't know if I've ever seen that either
Yeah.
in an Alice in Wonderland story. So that's really interesting.
So I don't know what I was expecting with like the because your opening was, you know, here are these two characters you've never seen before, and you know,
Right.
so
Yeah.
responsibility and I don't want to do this, and I'm like, okay, all right, well, okay, this sounds all very
And it was
familiar,
kind
and
of
then you're
veered
like,
and
yeah, and then like he
Yeah.
falls into it's Alice in Wonderland with Dracula. I'm like, oh my god.
well, I was
Yeah.
hoping the names Lewis and Carol would kind of hint at
Oh
it
my
being
god, you
Alice in
know, I
Wonderland.
didn't even catch that. I did not even catch that.
I would see. I think. I mean, yeah, my pitch is terrible now.
What?
But
Not at all. Oh
That's
my
not
god,
true
don't
at
say
all,
that.
dude.
but this would be a really, but it's a very visual approach, and
Yep.
I could see the pitch materials and the deck and everything that would go along with it. So I'm like I'm compelled. I'm like, oh, I want to help you put this together. Like,
Well, I would be welcome to make it real. Oh my gosh, it'd be passion project 100%.
And the whole thing about like Alice is one of Lucy's victims
Yeah.
from when she was wandering around the cemeteries of London just blew my mind. Totally
so
blew my
glad.
mind with that.
Yes.
Awesome. For somebody who hasn't read the book,
Yeah.
you really nailed it.
Thank you. I'm very glad to hear that. I'm very glad. Yeah, I did a lot of research, so I was hoping that I knew what I was talking about in some aspect.
Okay, do you guys want to hear one more?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. So I'm calling this one I'm tentatively calling this one Box 50.
Okay.
So our story revolves around the Van Helsing twins, Nels and Chelsea Van Helsing. And obviously it's modern day. And they're you know, in their 20s now, but when they were in their late teens, their father died. And before he left them, he was telling them, you know, you're going to have a responsibility, and you're going to have to you're going to have some very difficult times, and as long as you can rely on one another, you can get through whatever hardships come your way. And sadly, Dad passed before he could actually finish the full lecture and the lesson. But the twins kind of got it, and they decided to do exactly what their dad told them, and they started a band. So they found very quickly that their dad was right, and that it's a very hard life being an up and coming musicians. They're always broke, but they are doing the thing that they love. And in fact, they're so broke that they are living out of their van. But they also kind of made that part of their brand, and they called themselves Van Life as their band name is sort of like a play on their name.
Yeah.
So they are scrounging money to get from gig to gig, audition to audition, when they get a message from a lawyer who says that they are receiving an inheritance and to come to the reading of this will. And they don't know any other relatives that they've got, so this is kind of weird. So they go to this office, and this lawyer is fairly creepy, but not as creepy as the person who has passed away, and that is some Austrian, very wealthy Austrian philanthropist who has an extremely large art collection that's all kind of very weird and sort of part of the occult. And they don't know how they're related to this person. Their ancestry is Dutch, so maybe this guy is somehow distantly related. But anyway, he leaves to Chelsea a check for $2,000. And she's like, I'll take it. That's jackpot. And he leaves to Nels a ruby ring. And Nels is like, well, I think my sister got the better end of the deal here, but, this is the kind of ring that a rock and roll god would be wearing. So, I'll just roll with it. And sort of later on, right before they're going to do another show in some, basement club somewhere, he gets all dressed up and ready, and they're, he does the DJ, part of the set, and she's the singer. And so, like, he slips on the ring and is immediately possessed by the spirit of Dracula. And so suddenly, Chelsea has a very big problem. And so Dracula explains, like, your great-great-great-grandfather, orchestrated my demise. I sent 50 boxes of earth, of Transylvanian earth, from the basement of my castle to London so that I could continue to reconstitute my powers so far away. And your ancestor and all of his cronies destroyed 49 of those boxes. And that actually goes back to the book, because they never did find box 50. And so Dracula is like, if I can get to box 50, I can reconstitute my body and resurrect back into the world. But the problem is, the box is not where I left it. Someone has moved it. And now this is 125 years ago. So his only chance to find this box is with the descendants of the Van Helsing bloodline. So he basically says, we're going to go find this box, and if we find it, you can have your brother back.
Okay.
And so now she's got this major problem. So what this leads to is this very awkward road trip where they are having to go and go back to the old Van Helsing estate out on this remote piece of land in this dilapidated old house, and looking for old records, and there's a whole string of clues that then sort of lead to where Van Helsing may have stashed box number 50. But they've got another problem, and that is that other vampires have become aware that Dracula's presence is back. But they can tell that he is greatly diminished. He is controlling the body of a squishy mortal. So they start showing up, trying to take out Dracula, which means taking out Nels, and Dracula doesn't have any of his powers. He doesn't have any of his weaknesses, but he doesn't have any of his powers either. So Chelsea has to become the vampire hunter that she never knew she even was supposed to be. And ultimately, the only way that she can get Nels back, because the only way for Dracula to leave Nels's body is by taking off the ring. But unless Dracula voluntarily takes it off, if it's removed from Nels will just die. And so that's another problem, is that the vampires are trying to remove the ring from Nels, and that will mean that he's dead. So if they find box 50, there is a skeletal hand in that box, buried in that earth. And if Dracula pulls the ring off of Nels's finger and sticks it on a skeletal finger, then that hand, which is an ancient Dracula hand, can then start to reconstitute Dracula back to his body. But that's the only way that this is going to work. So that is essentially the journey to find box 50.
That's awesome.
And that is the pitch.
I love that. I love that so much. That's great.
And I think there's also a scene somewhere in the middle there where they wind up in a situation where they get recognized by somebody who's like a much bigger singer, and like this is, I mean, you could
Yes.
you could put Taylor Swift or whatever rock star cameo you wanted to put in this project, is like, why can you come play for me and my business manager, and we'll see, or my tour manager, and maybe you can be one of my opening acts. And it's like, Chelsea's like, this is what, but my brother is Dracula. And like, they go into this, this recording space, this performance space, and, they bring in Nelson's, computer, desktop setup with his turntables. And she's like, okay, you're gonna have to access Nelson's memories for how to use this. And Dracula's like, I can't do that. Like, that's not how this works.
How it works.
I don't have his memories. I don't even know what this thing is. And so Chelsea's like all freaking out because she's like, I have to do this a cappella right now. And as she's trying to talk her way through this, Dracula goes over to this sort of wall of instruments and pulls a Turkish guitar off and goes and sits down and then just slays with it. And it turns out that, like, he learned how to play the Turkish guitar when he was a prisoner of the Sultan as a child 500 years ago. And so they kind of crush the audition in this unexpected way. So just an example of something that would be
the hilarity that will ensue.
That's so good.
But so the dilemma, it's a big dilemma. Like, in order to save her brother, she has to bring this ultimate evil back. So how does that? How do you see that resolving? Does she follow through, and is Dracula unleashed back into the world, or do they figure out a workaround?
I don't know exactly how it ends at the moment, but my feeling is that Chelsea comes up with a clever way to get Dracula to remove the ring voluntarily, and so that she gets Nels back, and then but at the same time, Dracula, I think, needs to arrive on the scene in the very end of the movie, because if you're going to tease Dracula through a movie, you got to have him actually show up in full power at the end. But I think she probably kills him using the skills that he taught her in order to fight the other vampires.
Do they sort of come to an agreement to get to that point? But the deal is, from that point on, does she have to decide, hey, I have this opportunity, hey, I'm going to open for Taylor Swift, or I'm going to have to go make my life's mission now to hunt down Dracula because I unleashed him on the world? Like, is that kind of...
I mean, I like that. Yeah. I like
She's
that choice of responsibility.
Like, we come to an agreement. I will do this for my brother, but from here on, watch your back, buddy. Because now you got 2 Van Helsings after you. Sort of thing.
And I think that would make for an interesting conversation in the car at some point. So what do we do when we complete this mission? Because, like, you're going to be unleashed on the world, and that's on me. Like, every person you kill is on my hands. And Dracula saying, well, but people are going to die no matter what. Like, how is it? The kind of Dracula rationalizing of the way that he would do it, and them having to come to some sort of understanding of, like, just so you know, if this is gonna go down, then
it's like like the scene in Heat between Al Pacino and Robert De Niro.
Exactly.
Like,
if we ever see one another again, this is I'm gonna have to take you down.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And it goes both ways. Yeah, could be.
When he's possessed by Dracula, is he talking like Dracula in parlance of the time, and very feeling very, like, disconnected to the vessel that he's in, and
absolutely
fantastic.
Absolutely. And it seems like, I mean, that's I think that would be a fun
because
a fun thing for an actor to have to do.
Yes, and that's why I ask, like, because there seems like it's going to be impossible to not find comedy there.
I could definitely see it being a real thing. I'm such a sucker for road trip movies, and especially like bands and everything. It's perfect.
No, I dig it. I wasn't expecting that. So very cool. Very cool.
Excellent. Well, guys, thank you very much for coming and pitching your amazing stories. I would love to see either of these very different movies being made. Before we go, if anybody is interested in following you online or finding you in some particular way, how can they do that? And let's start with Sam.
All right. So again, I'm trying to do YouTube. So my YouTube channel is Digi Rainbow, Digi, and then rain with an E at the end, like in my name, and then bow. Just a cute little pun in there. And then my socials, you can find me at RainFaye on Twitter. It's kind of confusing. There's two I's at the end of rain with an E, capitalized. It's supposed to look like rain fell. It's a Kingdom Hearts thing. Don't worry about it. It might be hard to find me, but if you search Digi Rainbow on the internet, I'm sure I'll come up.
Excellent. And Tim?
I don't really have much of an online presence. If you want to, I'm on Instagram at TTC1138. And I post some things there every once in a while, mostly about my daughter. But so that if that doesn't bother you, you can check me out there.
Which, it should be said, Tim's daughter is a burgeoning pop star. So
yes, she's much cooler than I am.
So there you go.
Well, thanks. Thanks for inviting me, Sean. This was fun.
Guys,
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for coming and doing this. And for all of you out there, what would you do with a modern day Van Helsing project? There's a place where you can tell us about that. That's down in the comments. So feel free to leave that there. Otherwise, pitchers, thank you. We will see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. That was a lot of fun. Now, we have had stories about the descendants of Van Helsing before, whether it's Rachel Van Helsing in Tomb of Dracula, Adam Van Helsing in Vampirella, Sledge in Silver, Integra Van Helsing in Helsing, Vanessa Van Helsing in Van Helsing. So this is fertile ground that keeps being used, and quite frankly, it's gonna keep getting used for so long after all of us are eaten by vampires. So anytime the Van Helsing kids show up, I'm definitely here for it. If you happen to enjoy this episode, we have an entire playlist of videos, starting with The Lost Girls. And if you happen to be a creator who's coming up with your own story about vampire hunters and the enemies they face, we have an entire series of videos called Your Vampire Project, which allows storytellers to just kind of steep in questions of their own vampire world building. And lastly, I've got something kind of special coming up, and it's apropos to vampire hunters. So this is the first time that I've mentioned it, but in a couple of weeks, so later on this summer, the Vampire's Castle is going to be doing a movie premiere of a vampire movie. And this is, I'm very excited about this. And it's not Lucy X Mina. That is, by the way, still touring the festival circuit. In fact, I'm about to go to Wales to the International Vampire Film and Arts Festival to screen it and present it, so I'm looking very much forward to that. But this is a completely different vampire movie, and I will have more information on that next time. So until then, thank you guys very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.